Never struggled in school, but always kind of never felt like I was myself in high school and in school, and always felt a need to be a part of something so that I didn't feel alone or by myself. I wanted the quiet life, I wanted the peace, and I wanted to be heard and seen, and I wanted to feel safe in my own skin and comfortable in my own skin. And I knew that there were anchors out there. I knew there was a shred of hope for me, that there was a possibility, because I had seen, I can see it in other people, and I needed to have enough willingness to try something and to not give up.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again at We Are Mentally United podcast. I appreciate you folks for taking out the time again. And today we have here with us an amazing woman who is doing incredible work in the community, Amy Stowell.
Hello. Thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely, Amy. I appreciate you taking out the time and joining us today for the podcast. For folks who may not be familiar of you or the work that you're doing in the community, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, a little bit about myself. So, really got very active in a community and helping people about 10 years ago when I actually got into recovery. And that started me on the journey of not only helping myself, but starting the journey of helping others. And uh, the community has played an integral role in many parts of my life, but especially since I have had the transformation through recovery in the past 10 years of what I've done between family, friends, community, work. It's impacted every area of my life. And what I do now is 100% devoted to helping others in the space of not just career, but in the space of health, mindset, and everything that goes along with the daily struggles that we all face every single day.
I genuinely appreciate you doing that for the community and for sharing that because, again, the journey through recovery comes through huge amounts of challenges, obstacles. What was your journey like? What can you share a little bit and reflect upon your recovery journey?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And today, when I share it, I share it with a huge smile because I survived. I lived, and going back to the beginning of the journey, I grew up in the Midwest and grew up in a very normal childhood. Very great parents, two older sisters, and um, never struggled in school, but always kind of never felt like I was myself in high school and in school, and always felt a need to be a part of something so that I didn't feel alone or by myself. And by that, I mean, I can look at my life now and kind of see how I always wanted to make sure other people liked me or that I belonged to a group so that I felt part of something. And reflecting on that now, I can see that one of the reasons my path took the route that it did was I didn't have that confidence in myself and the understanding of who I was in the world, not just the community, but in the world. I felt like I had to follow the path of somebody else in order for me to belong. And what that ended up doing is creating this I'm never good enough by myself. I wasn't good enough if you didn't like me. I wasn't good enough if I wasn't married, if I didn't have children. And if I didn't have this job, and that continued for a lot of years. And to be blunt, it really was the demise of me continually looking for outside things to fix inside. Um, if my life didn't look like that other life, then I had to figure out what to do to make my life look like somebody else's. And excuse me, I could never be satisfied with who I was and what I was doing. It was never enough. Um, and I kept searching for the answer, what was missing. And I tried so many things that that never worked. And when that seeking led to alcohol and drugs and substances, that that entered a new element of health issues in the world of my path. And that journey was it was very painful. It was dark. It was lonely. Um, it was devastating, not just for me, but for my friends and family, and honestly, the community around me that watched it occur, because I not only was hurting myself, but I was going to establishments and I was meeting strangers and not being a decent human being in those places. And certainly not. I'm a very faithful person, and I've always had a strong, deep faith, but I don't believe I had a real connection with what's very important to me in my life, which is God. Um, because I help women in recovery, I acknowledge that there's other things that people believe in to help them in their faith. So it's whatever faith you believe in. But for me, it was God. But I didn't have that belief that God could help me find myself. Um, and a lot of things that you were saying at the beginning of um, the word journey. What is your journey? It's such a loaded question. And uh, my mom always told me I should write a book someday. And
You should.
it's on my bucket list to do a book, not only for myself, but to in essence to what you're doing today, just to have an opportunity to share, you know, my story is unique to me, but other people, I believe, can relate to it and hopefully see some of the hope in where my journey led me, that there is hope out there. Um, I guess to get clear on what actually happened. I was in my active alcoholism for a good 10 years. And over that 10 years, I don't need to get specifics on how horrible it got, but there were a lot of consequences of the actions during that period of time. And at the end of that journey, it was probably 2 or 3 weeks before my 50th birthday, actually. And I was on another drinking binge, and this one was my worst, and it landed me in the hospital, and it landed me in a coma. Um, and that coma was my wake-up call. It was my wake-up call that this illness and this um, really hatred of myself was ready to take my life if I was going to allow it to do that. And I get chills when I tell that piece of the story, because that's how real it is for me. But when I came out of that coma, um, I had one clear path that had been shown so brightly that there was no other option for me but to reach out for help in a way that I had never reached out before and be willing to surrender all of my any kind of excuses, any kind of beliefs I had before and be ready to do something different. And on my 50th birthday, that is the day that I believe I like to call myself, it's my Amy 2.0 version. It's the Amy that really started to come into who she is, what she believes in, how she is meant to show up in this world. And the last 10 years were still a big journey for me because at that time I still had a career. I had salvaged a career in project management, but it still wasn't fulfilling me. And I didn't feel like it was the journey that was set out for me and what I was meant to do in this life. So I started um, searching for an opportunity to make an impact on the world in a different way. And doors opened, possibilities opened. I opened my mind to different possibilities and different options. And while I sponsored women and helped in that way from a community perspective, I wanted to make even a bigger impact, which is where intentional clarity was born. I let go of the belief that I had to have a corporate job in the corporate world in the traditional sense, and was provided an opportunity to be a coach. And I sought help in how to do that and started my own business. And here we are today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And more power to you. I really appreciate you for being here today, for just being here in this world. Because again, like as you mentioned, talking about God, I feel like life is a gift of God. And there are definitely challenges and obstacles that we go through. I work a lot with young kids and their families as a mental health therapist, and I always try to use the analogy of seasons that we all go through different seasons of life. Some seasons are have more storms, other seasons have don't. And in those moments of storms, we try to do what's the best in that situation or in that moment, what we feel like is. Sometimes it leads into unhealthy coping strategies that help us get through in that moment, but then become up a struggle later on in the long run. And in those same storms, we also learn on how to manage ourselves, survive, be there. And we just have to get through those moments. But once we get through those seasons, the next time a similar season comes in, we are much more prepared. We're much more ready. And it's always good to have a guide on how to survive storms like that. So I will echo to what your mom also said. I definitely feel like you should write a book about it because there must be so many stories, bits and pieces that might not feel too huge for you, but for someone who might be in that storm, it could be a good guide to get away from it or to manage it or to navigate it. Because working up in the mental health profession, I see the biggest thing that I see is lack of hope. People going through some minor struggles, not minor, probably might be major for them, but like obstacles and struggles and feeling like I just want to give up. I work with kids aged 3 to 18 and their families predominantly. And they are going through those same challenges that you were going through decades ago when you were young, when you were their age. So the times have changed, everything has changed, the world has changed, but those humanistic things, they haven't changed. Like a lot of those kids in today's time and age, the things that we process or talk about is not feeling themselves in societal situations, or not feeling understood or not feeling seen by their parents or by their friends and just being misunderstood by everybody. Even if their parents are doing their best to understand their kids, kids just don't feel, if kids don't feel seen, then they don't feel seen. It's as simple as that. Or always trying to fit in into different groups and sometimes making up friends that they know are damaging or are toxic, but at least they at least have someone. They belong, exactly. Even if they're getting bullied 2 days out of seven, at least the other 5 days they're playing with them.
Yeah, they get the
You know?
attention and the need to be, you know, need to be heard and seen and felt as, bad attention is better than no attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And that sometimes kids do things to get that bad attention because they're getting no attention in a lot of regards. So they get into trouble. They do things to grab the attentions of either teachers and or their parents and stuff. So again, I feel like it would be really powerful for you and like for the world to have that knowledge and have those bits and pieces. One of the major reason why we started this podcast when we started our nonprofit was to share stories like yourself, because working up with kids, I genuinely felt like kids don't have any hope or don't have any figures to look up to or stories to inspire by. The stories that they look into or they get inspired by in today's time and age are usually in my headspace very superficial because they're usually connected to celebrities or media figures or things that they see on their screens. And I'm not saying that those people's lives are superficial, but what is portrayed on the media is superficial most of the time, you know. So when they go through a problem and they go through a struggle, they feel like we're just by ourselves. Like no one's gonna understand it. No one's gonna feel it. Like just like as you said it also, like if you went through it, you're not sure if people are gonna resonate with it. And that's what people who are going through with it also feel. So I feel like the bridge needs to be built more and more conversations like these need to be had. But one thing I wanted to touch with you upon and ask you about is what were some things, what were some things or some anchors that you had in that moment that helped you just keep moving on? Were there any anchors there?
It's a good question. And, when you say the word anchor, that is, that's something that I know is safe, right? An anchor is going to keep me safe and where's a container of safety in those moments. And I can tell you, what when I was struggling with that no hope feeling, right? And the no hope of I don't know how I'm ever going to get beyond where I'm at right now and have I always wanted, I wanted the quiet life. I wanted the peace and I wanted to be heard and seen and I wanted to feel safe in my own skin and comfortable in my own skin. And and I knew that there were anchors out there. I knew there was a shred of hope for me that there was a possibility because I had seen, I can see it in other people and I just needed to I needed to have enough willingness to try something and to not give up. So when you say an anchor, I think the anchor for me, I had a strong family who never gave up on me and didn't understand how I was processing things and couldn't understand, I was using substances to cope and, it looked to them that I was finding hope in a bottle. And I my anchor from my family perspective was that they were relentless in not giving up on me, but not from the perspective of that was my solution. I had to find people in the community that understood and knew what I was going through to share that common link, if you will. So I needed
Mhm.
people, I needed people that were using outside things to fix the inside because they weren't comfortable with themselves. So once I started finding other people that felt like me, that started to be my anchor. And what I
Mhm.
did was I was able to connect the dots and say, okay, they know, they get it, right? They feel like I do. Now, where did they go to change and to change their path going forward? So then I started to reach out to the mental health people. I started to realize that, this was something that needed help from fixing from the inside. And then I went to AA and started getting help with the medical piece of it. And I went to doctors and um, I realized that my anchors were going to be from people that were processing like I processed. And I kept wanting to go back to, why am I not like my family? Why am I not like my parents, not like my sisters? How come I couldn't, you know, get the same insight as my parents and my family raised me to be? And I had to let go of the belief that I had to be like somebody else. I had to believe that the anchor was within me the whole time. The anchor was within Amy. I had to take back the power myself to make the changes that I needed to make to be the person I am today.
Beautiful. No, that's amazing. And anchors sometimes are things that we don't even recognize up in those moments. That's how I feel like it. There's just something that just pulls you out of it. And I feel like that community aspect, that reaching out to people or trying to find a people who could see you, understand you, was something that really pulled up for you in that moment. I did not struggle with um, recovery or substances or alcohol, but like I struggled a lot with um, self-harm and suicidal thoughts when I was young. And at that time, the thing that pulled me out personally, reflecting back on my life, was soccer, or was Manchester United, which is a soccer team based in UK that I used to follow. And in that moment, I did not know that this is a thing that's like, keeping me quote unquote alive because I was just enjoying it in that moment. Like that was the only thing that was making me feel like, that life does have good moments. And like, there are people out there who I can spend time with who would really enjoy up like, this company and stuff. Uh, but now becoming a therapist and reflecting upon your life, when you do the self-reflection, that's when I pinpoint at that thing and I'm like, yeah, soccer really did a magic for me in that moment. It really pulled me out of that thing that I was struggling up with.
Well, and that's interesting how you say that because, now, at that time that those were my anchors. And 10 years ago, everything just didn't flip to, okay, now I'm great and now I'm the new Amy and here I go on life. I still struggle. And
Hmm.
one of the questions that I get asked a lot is, what are your anchors now? What do you do now, when you get in those situations? Because I still can get disconnected. I can still get that lonely feeling where I'm looking outside for something to fix the inside. And the more open I am to looking for more places to get those anchors, the better off my life is. The things that I have in I call it my toolkit of how do I stay grounded, right? How do I stay grounded? And my toolkit has expanded to 3 years ago, I moved to Arizona and never have hiked before in my life. Never. Hiking is one of my favorite activities. How you describe soccer, that's how hiking is for me. I go by myself, I connect with God, and I immediately know that I am alive and this is part of loving life. I still go to AA meetings. I still sponsor women. I started this business not to make money, but to help people. Everything I do comes from the learning that I've done on what fills me up inside, what brings the greatest joy in my life. Um, and the the other tools that I have learned in my coaching group that I'm a part of is breath work and learning how my body interacts with my feelings and my emotions. And I've learned different ways to regulate my nervous system. So when I'm getting anxious or feeling uncomfortable or out of place, I I pause and I try and anchor myself in a way that honors who I am, who I've learned to become, and know that it's not wrong, it's not weird, I'm not different. I am just Amy. And um, I hope that makes sense in the words that I use because
Absolutely does.
yeah, prior to 10 years ago, I would analyze everything I said. Did that sound weird? Does that make you not want to like me? Because I shared how I felt, am I still okay with you? I used to analyze everything I said or how I looked. And now it's such an internal process of why am I uh, so judgmental about myself? I love myself who I am today, and that has taken a while to get to that point. But it's not just who I am inside, it's who I am outside. Part of my journey is weight loss. In 2002, I weighed 330, so I was very overweight, very unhealthy. And part of that was not liking myself, not feeling good about myself. So that had a lot of it had a lot of emotional impact to it as well. And um, when I decided to take the weight loss and the health as a serious condition and how it related to me not loving myself, it totally reframed how I looked at weight in the body and how I view myself, like I said, both inside and out. So I went on a weight loss journey, but it was more of I'm going to love my body the way it is. And the weight loss was a wonderful impact of that change in framing, if that makes sense.
No, no, it absolutely does. Um, and again, I feel like hearing it from you, your story is all about liberation, liberating yourself from all those thoughts, all those shackles, all those patterns that you had up in your mind or as you had growing up, in terms of receiving that rather than receiving that exterior validation, finding up much more internally. Which brings me up to a question to something that you previously said. You said that one question that you would always have that would make you struggle up a lot is why am I not like my family? Why am I not like my brother? Why am I not like my siblings or anything of that sort? So when that question is still, if you still ask your question at this point of life, how would you how would you answer that question differently now as compared to when those questions would come up in your mind before?
It's a good question, and it has come up recently in the fact of so I turned 60 last year, and when I turned 60, it was a little bit before I turned 60, but I decided I was ready to date. And up until now, I have never been married and I don't have any children, which was another hurdle for me to get through what's wrong with me. Why have I never been married? Why haven't I been able to have kids? It's the same comparison of all my friends, my sisters, and my journey did not take that path. Now, the reason I don't have kids had to do with a health situation, which didn't allow me to have kids. But that in turn led to another path of depression for me because my belief was there was no man that would want to marry me because I couldn't have kids. So in my early 30s, I went through a little period of, again, what's wrong with me? Um, and like I said, when I in my late 50s, I made the decision that I was ready. And now I believe up until then, I don't think I was ready for a relationship. I don't think I was ready for a healthy relationship. And a lot of it had to do with parents that were married for 65 years, two sisters who had been married and families and successful in their life and career, but not Amy. And I knew with the work that I had done, my view today was God is putting the people in my life and attracting me to the people that I have become attractive to. So, in other words, I knew that the paths would cross with the people that need to be in my life at the right time in the right place. I don't have to look outside for it because I kept looking outside for those things. And so, to answer your question directly, years ago, I would say, okay, I don't have what they have, so I need to figure out how to get it. They're married, so I need to go on all the dating apps and find the person that I need to marry. My view today and in the last couple of years has been I just need to keep showing up as who I am in the places that I show up in, increase my network of friends, and it will happen. And it has happened. I've met somebody who it wasn't how I expected to meet somebody at all, but we are more aligned than I have ever been aligned with a person in my life. And I know that's a result of me just being me and allowing it to happen instead of searching outside for it to happen. I don't know. Did I freeze?
Yes, you froze up over there.
Oh, okay. I'm back. Where did I end?
No, no, I heard you. I heard you full. I heard you full, and I was just gonna say, um, I absolutely love that for you. I genuinely love that for you because it shows huge, huge, huge evidence of what can happen when one believes in themselves, when one has that self-confidence, when one sees themselves with that lens or with that perspective. Because when you do so, that's when you take actions accordingly. And when you take actions accordingly, that's when I feel like you attract all that energy that, like, comes towards you as well. Um, so no, I appreciate you sharing that, and I absolutely love that it has worked for you. And again, it all comes down from self-love, self-confidence, self-esteem, and I feel like that's a big part of your journey.
It is. And to reiterate, it's easy to sit and speak to it today. And, anyone listening that still doesn't believe or doesn't have hope or I used to listen to people like this or see people like this and just be like, yeah, that's never going to happen to me. Yeah, she was fortunate. She had, a loving family and, you know, all I can suggest to that is have an ounce of willingness to see it outside of that view, right? Just an ounce of willingness to see it outside that view because that's another example of comparing of thinking that you have this and I don't have that and I constantly did that it was always better on the other side. You have more than I do because I don't have that element of it. And the more that I could learn from other people that understood what I was feeling wasn't weird and wasn't strange and I'm grateful that the mental health industry, I think, has shifted from what it was when my parents were young. There's a different belief and a different standard around that. Still got a long way to go.
Long, long way to go. No, definitely. I completely resonate with you on that, but I genuinely feel like there's still so much more to do, so much more awareness to raise, so much more destigmatizations to do because I feel like from an outer perspective, a lot of change has happened, but subconsciously people still hold a lot of rigid beliefs, which again, like, which are difficult to change and stuff. But I'm really glad with how much education people are having around these topics and conversations they're having. Um, and I also very much agree with you on, like, when people, it's okay to, it's not okay, it's easier to reflect back and talk about in the about our journey. But when you are in the middle of that storm, it's difficult. It's like it feels like life ending difficult in those moments. Uh, because in those moments you cannot make sense of things, or one plus one does not seem like two in those moments. But I always try and tell people, try and find that inner fire, that anchor that can pull you out of it. It does not have to be like in your space, it was community or trying to find a people that you could relate to or you can connect with. In my case, it was soccer. it does not have to be those same things. All of us are different. Siblings are different. Parents and children are different. Find your own things in those moments. Find the things that if you're having a day full of dread, that thing makes you smile even for 2 seconds. If it makes you smile for 2 seconds, it has the capacity to make you smile for 5 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So try and find it up from that basic point. Because all of us, I feel like, in some capacity, does have those things within our life or within our mind somewhere. Because all of us have those serotonin receptors that do get activated when we consume something or when we do something. How do they get activated? That's part of the journey for us, I feel like, for all of us. But it's always okay to take inspirations from what other people are trying, but don't use that it's gonna work. If it worked for them, it has to work for me. Because if you go up with that mindset, then there is a more percentage of chance that you might fail.
Great. And you really pinpointed one of the um, I think about those darkest times, right? When you are struggling to see any piece of light, hope, whatever. And it does have to be something personal to you, and it has to be your thing. You can't use somebody else's thing, right, to find that. And I'm a visual person, so for me, the beach makes me happy. Water makes me happy. I've learned that water flowing is something. It's not just spiritual to me, but it's calming and it's reflective and it's always flowing and it's always changing. So it has a lot of meaning for me. So around my desk, I have my beach is my happy place. And I have a picture of a beach and I have a picture of the
That,
mountains. See?
that's my happy place. That's literally my happy place.
Exactly. And I believe everybody has a happy place, right? Maybe it's in your bedroom when you were 5 years old with your bears all around you, but everybody has some sort of a happy spot that, like you said, for 5 seconds, and then that can extend to a minute. I have a very special rosary that I carry in my purse. That in one of my worst moments before I got sober, I was in a bad accident in the winter in the Midwest, and I trudged through some snow to a home to get help for myself. And um, I had been drinking, so I was not in a good state, and I didn't have any shoes on, so my feet were frozen by the time I got to this house in the middle of the night, and ended up being a husband and wife who were taking care of their granddaughter for their daughter who was in rehab for alcohol. So they knew of my illness, brought me in, fed me, called my parents, got help for me, and gave me the gift of a glow in the dark rosary. And the mother told me to carry that with me at all times, and I will never be alone. And I've had that rosary
Wow.
for it has to be 18 years ago that that accident occurred. And that to me was a light for a long time and still is a light to me. And that rosary still glows in the dark today. So those things exist for people. And like you said, you just have to find them and know that it comes from a place that's bigger than you that can help you through that moment.
Absolutely. And I feel like that moment and that connection was not an accident. That was meant to happen. That was just like that's my belief in things. Like I genuinely believe like the universe, God, whatever people want to believe in, it makes you path cross with people like that for a genuine reason. Which brings me up towards my next topic. You mentioned before our call, and I've seen it on your LinkedIn as well, that you are a person of faith. Can you share a little bit around how faith has impacted your well-being and helped you get through difficult moments in life?
I grew up Catholic, so I was introduced to the church real early. And I don't feel like my faith got connected directly with a belief that it would impact my life the way that it does today until I got sober. And I think that in my dark moments of um, not just drinking, but my dark moments of not loving myself and not feeling a part of and always feeling different and all of those unsettling emotions, um, I kept searching for a faith in something bigger than myself that could help me with that, but I didn't know how to access it. Maybe that's a good way to describe it. I didn't know how to access it other than the ritual of going to church, but I didn't feel the connection from a life-changing moment until 10 years ago when I actually made a commitment to change my life, and that included how my faith was going to lead the way for the next season of my life, if you will. And that journey has been, I'll say it's my North Star because it is the most important thing at every decision I make. And when I don't put my faith in God first, I start to feel it. It has a different feeling for me. Um, and all of the challenges that I have faced, when I let go and I let my faith lead the way, the results are better than I could have ever imagined. I constantly practice getting out of the way, letting God and faith lead the direction and listen to it. If something isn't falling into place or it's too challenging and it's not working out, it's generally not the right thing to do. Doesn't mean I don't believe that God or my faith is ever saying no to something. It's either I've got something better for you or this isn't the right time. Um, and that's how I view it. I don't see no's in my life other than it's not the time for that, especially in this dating, the dating season that I was in. I wanted the relationship. I wanted the happiness of sharing my life with somebody because I was happy now. But when I tried to fix, manage, and control that piece of my life, it never worked out because I tried to fix, manage,
Mhm.
and control it, right? I tried to like what he liked, and that didn't work that way. But the gentleman that I am interested in dating now is I just sit back and let it unfold. And he is also very faithful. So he is showing me his journey of faith in God, and we both have that as the priority. So when you share that, everything else just kind of falls into place. And it's interesting how when you have faith, I don't have fear anymore because I used to fear everything. I used to be afraid of, oh, I don't know, that decision. I'm afraid. I'm afraid that that's not going to work out, or I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. And I have really embraced that fear is lack of faith. Fear is lack of faith. Um, and there's several acronyms that I've learned about faith or about fear. And one of my
Where there
favorite
is,
is,
where there is fear, faith usually does not exist.
yes,
I've
yes,
heard, I've heard that one. That one I really like.
I do too. So it's a good mantra for me. I don't face fear very often anymore. I used to wake up with fear and go to bed with fear. But some of the other practices I do, I do meditation every morning and prayer every morning, and that starts out my day. And and I pray throughout the day. It's kind of weaved throughout my day. And I had a challenging day today. I had a challenging day, and um, I have fear for um, somebody that I'm working with who decided she didn't want to be in recovery anymore and is back out on the streets again. And I fear for her life and her livelihood. and maybe fear isn't the right word because I have faith that God will show her the path that is needed for her. Um, but I guess I speak to it in that it I have to be reminded when that fear pops up in me, I have to remember where that is and what it's true of, which is, like you said, it's a lack of faith.
Mhm. And that's a good way to pivot into our next question is you've been conquering your own fears through faith for yourself, and you also help a lot of women outside to conquer their journeys when it comes to recovery. Can you share a little bit more about what intentional clarity is and the work that you are doing up with intentional clarity?
Mhm. Sure. So intentional clarity, again, was born out of my own journey of knowing that I wanted to have an impact in as many people's lives as I could by sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And the name itself came from that. It's the act of finding what someone's intention is in their life and helping them get clear on what that is. And I built what I offer around uh, people that were perhaps in the same situation I was in a corporate world. And a lot of people in project management, I found, have had the same impact and consequences that I had. And I feel that I used my work and the stress and anxiety and overwhelm I felt in my work as a conduit to my problem with alcohol. So I used alcohol to deal with a job that was not only not satisfying, but it was overwhelming. It was working 80 hours a week. It was traveling. It was not balancing any kind of work with a personal life and not taking care of Amy. So for a lot of years, I continued to chase the money, the job, I need more money so I can buy more things, so I can feel better. And when I paused to realize for myself that that was not what I was on this earth to do, and started building my coaching program, that's how I help other people. So what I do with my posts on LinkedIn is I post stories about myself. And I ask if anybody else has ever used alcohol to cope with stress at work, if they've ever used other things to cope with the situations, how their work-life balance is. And so through intentional clarity, the clients that I work with are, some of them do have a similar problem with alcohol. Maybe they aren't in recovery, but they admit that they had the same thoughts and behaviors that I had. It just didn't reach the level that it did for me, which builds the connection, right? So now I'm building a community of people throughout the country. I work with people all over the country that can relate to not having a work-life balance. And a lot of them, it's to the point where they have, a husband or a wife and kids that they're ignoring because they can't handle their work situation. So what I do with intentional clarity is look at all those pieces and how can we see where we need to balance some of the self and maybe look at some coping skills for relaxation and meditation, and where is your confidence not showing up that is keeping you in this toxic work environment and this overstressed job. So, and with intentional clarity, I end up kind of melding the two worlds of for me, what I learn in recovery, as well as what I've learned in the corporate world. So I really get that fulfillment of helping community from intentional clarity. And then totally separate from that, I still have a whole network of people within the recovery community, right? And that's totally separate. I do it as a business so I can keep helping more people, right? That's how I operate. And I don't operate from a sales perspective. It's from a how can I keep changing the world and being part of it from a transformational standpoint and being able to help others reach what I've reached.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing that again, because I feel like programs like those, which I like to call non-clinical programs, are a huge backbone in terms of helping people up who are struggling up. Because clinical helps up in a lot of different ways, but sometimes just finding up that community aspect of it, or just finding up a resource of a person who has actually walked those steps, walked those journeys, and has a story to share is extremely powerful. One of the things that we believe as an organization at Mentally United is one of the reasons why people are struggling with so much of mental health struggles is because of lack of communities. Because people have become way dependent on themselves, on their devices, or just like, in their own bubble. And they're not connected. So, which is why when they struggle, they feel like they are all by themselves, or they struggle to ask for, to seek support or to seek help because they feel like they don't have that connection anymore over there, or people are not going to understand them. But things were different, like, when we were growing up, because community was much more valued at that time. So I really appreciate you doing up this work, because again, the knowledge that you're spreading, the LinkedIn post, that's how I found you in the first place too, through that LinkedIn post. Those are really powerful things. And um, I always try, one of the things that we do at Mentally United is we create up mental health resources and distribute in the community. And I always tell to people that when you put something out there, whether that be this podcast, which will be out there very soon and published on our channel, that when you publish content out there, whether that be a post, graphic, image, video, post it with the intention, whatever intention you have. But like, if your intention is to help people, don't put up a deadline to it, because those things are gonna stay on the digital platforms for an eternity. So even if it doesn't not help someone right this in this specific moment, or in you froze again.
Now I'm back.
Now you're back. Yeah. So I was saying that even if that post, the post that you posted, the content that we posted, even if it does not help someone right now in this moment, it's always going to be there, and it might help someone 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 9 months down the line. And
Absolutely.
even if it helps one person, that then I feel like the work's done. Um,
Agreed.
I'm a firm believer that universe, God, whatever people want to call it, like they make us walk through that path so that we can learn from that path, and we can help and make sure others don't walk that same path. Or when others are walking up that same path, they have at least some tools or some things to navigate that storm, or that situation. Um, but in terms of intentional clarity, you mentioned that it is spread all across the country. Uh, what are some platforms? How can people reach out to you?
Sure. So the main platform I work on right now is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn and message me directly on there. I do have a Facebook page, but I don't promote intentional clarity as much on Facebook as I do on LinkedIn, only because I find that the the professional I think that there is another stigma of silence in the professional world where people are still nervous about coming forward with um, admitting that they're burned out, admitting that they're unhappy in their work, in their career, unhappy that they're at this age and haven't found their fulfilling career, unhappy the pain points that I am finding in the LinkedIn network of people. I really have a heartfelt connection to because I feel like some of these people have never felt heard or seen in what they're going through. And when I can just be genuine with, yeah, I've felt that. I've come home every night and had a glass of wine because I couldn't handle my day. Yeah, I've gone on vacation and not even enjoyed myself because all I'm thinking about is the job because I don't know how to relax. And and that's how I initially was able to get out of the hell that I was in because I found somebody that listened and heard because they understood how I felt and how I was. So if I can, DM with people and ask questions and just be curious of, tell me about the situation that you're in. And when somebody says, I hate going to work every day. My boss is demeaning and belittles me and micromanages me, and it makes me feel like I'm stupid. And if I can just say, you are not stupid, and provide a landing spot for somebody to be able to share authentically, that is, even if we don't get on a phone call, at least to be that board for somebody to be heard and seen.
Again, I appreciate you being there for them and doing that because again there are so many struggles that people are constantly going through, especially in workplace environment, with whether that be with burnout, whether that be with toxic environments and toxic workplaces. I have worked up at a couple of toxic workplaces, so I very much am aware on how it just completely kills you from the inside or drains down your energy. um, I used to be big in social media and stuff, but I did a digital media job in which it was not supportive at all, very toxic environment. And now I don't use social media at all. Maybe it might be a good thing in hindsight, but I was very much into tech and stuff. But now I try and stay away from it as much as I can because it fully burned me out. So I'm glad that you are there as that, like, that soundboard, support board for the community out there. And we are also gonna drop in all the links for Amy in the description of the video. So please feel free to click upon those descriptions and find up her email address and the things that are mentioned up over there as well. Um, Before we end up this podcast today, Amy, because I feel like there are still so many things that I want to talk to you about, but like, and there are so many things that we can keep talking about. But in terms of hope, it was really difficult for you to find hope in those dark seasons, in those dark moments. So if we reflect upon hope, what gives you hope right now at this healthy moment of life? And then what is a message that you would like to give to someone who might be struggling with hope, who might be going through a tough season?
For anyone who is in a dark season right now, I guess the first message I have is you're not alone. You're never alone. And as hard as this might be, find the one thing, whether it's a person, it's an image, it's a sentence, it's a picture, whatever the one thing is that is worthwhile and worth living and worth taking that next step. Hold on to that one thing because that one thing will continue to multiply the more you go back to it. So wherever you can dig in and find a glimmer of something, maybe it's a pet, um, maybe it's a piece of candy, maybe it's a favorite stuffed animal, maybe it's a time when you went on a roller coaster ride. But find that one thing that you can hold on to and remember that brings a smile to your face. Um, and that you're not alone. You're never alone. Um, what brings me hope today is the idea that I have let go of, that nothing is impossible. I haven't, let me rephrase that. I have a firm belief in that anything is possible. I have no limitations on something won't work or something's not possible or something can't happen or no, that will never work. Or I don't believe in the word no or can't or shouldn't or won't or don't. Those words have been removed from my vocabulary because in the world that I have seen and what has opened up for me, anything is possible. I sometimes feel like I am Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz with ruby slippers on. And I went when I went through therapy and when I went through, some of those dark times, one of the things that came out of it and some imagery for me was that I found myself with ruby slippers on. And one of the phrases, if you're a Wizard of Oz fan, is you always had the power. It was always within you all the time, right? And that is my mantra. I get chills when I say it. I've always had the power within myself. I just didn't know it until it was evident to me a little over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I strongly believe that all of us have that inner power, inner strength, or what I like to say to my kids, we all are superheroes in one capacity or the other. We just have to find up that strength. So again, I appreciate you sharing that wisdom and sharing up your journey. I would really love for you to write that book too, because I think that's going to be really helpful. So I'm going to give you a little nudge on that. But I appreciate you taking out the time, Amy, and reflecting upon your life and sharing about the things that you have been through. You're an extremely strong person, very inspiring person, and I'm sure this message will out to a lot of people. And again, I appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you. You're very welcome. And again, thank you for having me. And just don't give up out there. It's a beautiful world that we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's a beautiful note to end the podcast at. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and stay in tuned for the next episode. Bye bye.